Shia LaBeouf had his face in every bit of Hollywood in the 2000s. From Disney's Even Stevens to iRobot, Constantine, or his more iconic role in Disturbia, which is a very underrated slasher film. And who could forget his more adult take in Nim? Can't say the full title of the film for YouTube's sake. Shia LaBeouf was a force that every bit of Hollywood could not get enough of. His biggest role at the end of the 2000s was to play as Sam Witwicky in Michael Bay's next big blockbuster franchise, Transformers. But after the third film in the Transformers universe, Shia would not only disappear from the franchise, but would also fade from Hollywood as a whole due to his public outbursts that were captured by the press. What was the cause of this big shift, and why was Shia's disappearance as Sam Witwicky the beginning to an end of a beloved series?
Actor Shia LaBeouf is free tonight after spending last night at a Midtown Police Precinct station house. He was arrested after he allegedly disrupted a
Transformers has been a fan favorite since its conception in the comic and animated atmosphere around the 1980s. A bond between a person and their car was the focus of the plot, but with a twist of war and robots from outer space that would transform into these cars would really make for an interesting story. The spark that brought the live-action movies of the 2000s was from appreciation of the animated series Transformers, otherwise known as Transformers G1 or Generation 1. While the movies were not a complete adaptation to the series or the comics, they still brought nostalgia for the older generations and revenue for newer. My first memory with Transformers was when I was 5 playing at a friend's house, and my friend had the Sideburn figure, or a Dodge Viper of the 90s, that would transform into this really cool blue robot. I would literally sit there for hours making it transform. Keep in mind, this was 6 years before the live action movie would release in 2007. Speaking of the 2007 film, I would ultimately change the landscape of what Transformers was. Famous director Michael Bay, who brought films like Armageddon and Bad Boys to the big screen, wanted to use his talents of explosive action towards a different project. This project being Transformers. You could say Bay wanting to use his vision in Transformers is how the films were not a complete adaptation of the series or comics of the 80s. As in most Michael Bay films, there are major explosions, weird oversaturation of color, and the multiple shots of space. Just compare Armageddon to the first Transformers film, and you can see how close they literally look. So how does Shia come into the frame if I'm only going to talk about Transformers? See the transition I did there? Pretty cool, right? No? Okay then. Shia's cameo performances in films like Charlie's Angels, Full Throttle, or even Constantine would mark a major turning point for his career. As you could tell, he wanted to break away from his clean appearance with Disney. What makes Shia unique and why he would be the face of the Transformers franchise was the use of him being himself. In a 2009 article from Today, co-writer of the Transformers film, Alex Kurtzman, simply stated about Shia, "What you see on screen is very much what you get with Shia." It was this appeal that would make Shia LaBeouf not only popular in Transformers, but also in major blockbuster films like Disturbia, where he played an angsty teen that was put on house arrest and would soon find out by watching the neighborhood that a series of killings were happening next door. His acting in this movie in particular would bring audiences to see him as a more artistic actor and less like a Disney flop. This method would also bring the Transformers franchise to worldwide success, as most people could relate to Shia under his role as Sam Witwicky, who was an outcasted teen that would soon find himself in between a war with alien robots that stemmed from the bond between him and his car. The Transformers live-action movie released in 2007, but alongside that release came major success. As I stated earlier, the nostalgia factor played a big part, but it wasn't just the Optimus Prime and Bumblebee cameos that made the franchise. The visuals were stunning of the time and still are to this day, but you can tell that the film is really starting to show its age. Transformers would gain media attention, so much so that it had sequels and prequels. Following after the first film, the second and third installments of the franchise would release in 2009 and 2011, with the main protagonist being Shia LaBeouf or Sam Witwicky. Things would soon change by the fourth film, Age of Extinction, where Mark Wahlberg, known as K. Jaeger, now played the protagonist. Truthfully, I feel like this is where the franchise had died, mainly because the writing was really awful, and let's just say the CGI was very poor, and a lot of people criticized that at the time. Even looking back at the fourth and fifth installments, they are a major downgrade from the first, second, and third films. But all live action films of Transformers had the same cut and dry narrative, which is we have to save the planet or humans will no longer exist. But it was the original cast of the first film that made the movies feel more connected to the audience. So that leads me to, why was Shia not in the fourth installment? People, including myself, really loved his acting in this franchise. He made it feel more realistic and less like a cash grab for Hasbro toys. In Shia LaBeouf's absence of the fourth film, he would go on to do multiple interviews stating that he has nothing to contribute, and neither does the character Sam Witwicky.
But I don't have anything new to contribute, and I don't think there's anywhere to take Sam.
While that does feel like the logical conclusion, it does seem like Michael Bay wanted to take the franchise into a different path, leaving Sam behind. In the fifth film or installment, Shia or Sam does make a cameo appearance, but it could be hinted that his character was killed off and we would never get that same spark again. I do feel like Shia held the franchise up pretty well, and without his character as Sam Witwicky or even himself being in the picture, Transformers would not be the same. It is no secret that Shia LaBeouf has a track record of getting arrested, being abusive, and having an addiction with alcohol. In the 2010s, Shia would be in multiple headlines and have multiple allegations from his partners of being abusive. So much so that it would change his appearance overnight in Hollywood. This type of media coverage caused his career to be uncertain. There were a lot of people in Hollywood that just didn't want to work with Shia, but then there were also a lot of people in Hollywood that did want to work with Shia due to his method of acting.
I have rights. I have rights. I'm an American. You got me in my hotel, arrested me in my hotel for doing what, sir? Let's go. Yo, you really got these cuffs on me heavy, bro.
And while people were watching a man who had been a Hollywood icon for so many years go down a rough path, he would still make appearances on Jimmy Kimmel Live to talk about his arrest. Or what about when he decided to spit some bars with Sway? Shia wanted to break away from the clean appearance of Disney, but you could also tell that he wanted to break away as the main focus of Transformers. While Shia has multiple highly rated films under him after the success playing Sam Witwicky because he wanted to take his work into a more artistic view, people still see him as the guy who plays with robots, mainly because that was his biggest career turning point. But I do have to say, a lot of the films that he has starred in are amazingly good because of the method of his acting and how he just presents himself as being himself. Just because somebody is a good actor, it really doesn't excuse of the toxicity of who somebody can be. Now, this will be the end of my video, guys. What are your thoughts as to why Shia never appeared in the Transformers franchise again? Was it because he wanted to take his career into a more artistic view? Or was it because of the history of being a toxic that caused the franchise to take a different approach?